In the following video, we will explain how to create a supplier in Sage X3. To do this, we can navigate to Common Data in the left list. We can scroll down to BPs and we can select Suppliers. The suppliers screen will be displayed. All suppliers that have been created in X3 will be displayed in the left list. If we click on one of these suppliers, its details will be displayed in the details section. To create a new supplier, we can select New in the right list. So now we need to enter the header details. So we'll start by entering the category by clicking on the selection icon. And then we can select one of the supplier categories that has been set up. We can now go and enter a short description for the supplier. We can enter an acronym for the supplier. And now we can enter the company name of the supplier. We can also enter a company name too for the supplier if needed. The user will also notice that the country, currency and language has defaulted from the supplier category that we have selected. Any fields within X3 that display with the little orange star means that these fields are mandatory and we cannot create a new record if these fields have not been entered. So we will, in the Identity tab, we will enter all the mandatory fields. In the bottom section, we've got the little intersite grid. So if the supplier is an intersite supplier, we can tick the tick box. We can now go over to the Addresses tab. And now we can specify a specific address for the supplier. X3 will not allow us to create a supplier if we haven't specified at least one address. To do so, we can go to the Addresses grid. We can enter the code PHY for physical address. And then we can enter the address details in the details section. If we do not have the specific details for the address, we can leave the fields blank, but we need to at least enter the PHY or POS for postal in the addresses grid to activate that we have entered an address. So we can enter then the specific country and its description will then default. We've got 3 fields where we can enter the physical address. We can enter a specific postal code as well as the city. If the supplier has got a specific website that can be visited, we can enter it in the website field. If we scroll down, we will have the phone section and the email section. So we can enter 5 different phone numbers, for instance a landline, a fax line, a toll-free line, other and mobile. We can also then enter 5 different email addresses for the supplier. We can now move over to the Commercials tab. In the Commercials tab, any details that we have specified under the supplier category will be defaulted to this tab as well. We can make the necessary changes as we need to. For instance, the class, we can then select a different class for this specific supplier. We can enter a minimum order amount for the supplier. We can also specify if we can do multi-line orders to the supplier. In the receipt details section, we can also specify a specific carrier, a specific delivery mode, a specific location, a specific Incoterm. We can specify the transport location. We can also specify the due date origin. Will it either be the receipting date or the invoicing date? And we can also then have different discounts and charges for different suppliers, which we can enter. We can now move over to the Management tab. So here we can specify the supplier type. Is it a normal supplier, a prospect, or a miscellaneous supplier? We can also specify different rate types for the supplier, being a daily rate, monthly rate, average rate, or custom stock file exchange. For this example, we'll just select daily rate. We can also enter a credit renewal date, which means that when we enter an authorized credit limit, we can specify the date where the credit needs to be reviewed, and then the credit can also then be adjusted. So if we enter the authorized credit amount, we can have the 3 different checks in X3. We can select the check, which means that if we go over the credit limit, we will be prompted with a message stating that we have reached the credit limit, but we would be able then to still process an order towards the supplier. We can either then select no check, which means we will not be prompted with a warning message if we reach the credit limit, or we can select hold, which means that if the credit limit is reached, we will not be able to process an order towards the supplier. In the bottom section of the Management tab, we can enter 5 different statistical information with regards to the supplier. We can now move over to the Financials tab. In the Financials tab, we can specify specific invoice BP, a specific supplier group, a specific risk BP, or a specific paid to for the supplier. So if the supplier belongs to a group of suppliers, we can separate them by having or managing them as to who will be the invoicing BP, who will be the risk BP, and who will be the paid to. The user will also see that the accounting code has been defaulted from the supplier category that we have selected. We also need to enter the specific payment terms for the supplier. We can enter a settlement discount for the supplier if we do give them a settlement discount. We have also got then the payment section, where we can specify if this will be excluding tax or tax inclusive. If we scroll down and look at the analytical section, if we specify specific analytical dimensions on the supplier category, these would have defaulted to the supplier. But because we have left it blank, we can specify specific dimensions for different suppliers. So we can enter then analytical dimensions that we can use for reporting purposes. We can now move over to the ranking tab. So the ranking tab is just a quick view as how we can rate our suppliers. We can rate them on lead times, we can rate them on pricing, quality, quantity, and then the little grid to the right will then just give you a quick view as to the type of supplier that we have.